Welcome to the Agent Economy, episode 2. My name's Chris Grimsey, and over to you, Stephen. Introduce yourself.
Hey Chris, Stephen Hunnite here, founder of LMO7, and super excited to be back for episode 2.
Awesome. So this week we are keeping the same format. We are going to be covering a couple of hot topics across the AI landscape, looking into new models that are released by Meta and Anthropic. We'll also give you an update on some of the tech layoffs that we're seeing across the industry. The latest news article came out around the numbers impacted in Q1 of this year. Then we're going to jump into specific industry news for the marketing industry. So looking here at a news article that was released by BBC around AI search. Then jumping into the world of agentic commerce. So some updates here around Shopify and how they're obviously launching storefronts across many millions of merchants across the world. And then we'll do a little bit around Amazon and then give you guys a bit of an update on ChatGPT, at least what we know to date, and then we'll give you more updates in episode 3 as we get them from the industry. So kicking off things, I think a key thing which we mentioned in episode 1 is that the AI models themselves are becoming obviously much more powerful as we go through in the new releases. The release windows themselves are actually shortening. So we're already in a case now where Anthropic are releasing their latest models. That window typically would be 6 months, but now the windows themselves are shortening pretty dramatically. So some news from the industry. Meta announcing new AI models in a kind of major test of their company's ambitions. They've previously launched models which were open source, but they really weren't up to scratch and not really competing with other frontier models in the market. So this is a really interesting move by Meta, something which Mark Zuckerberg is obviously doubling down on, releasing AI capabilities across their own ecosystem and definitely stepping up their investments in those new models. Expect more to come. The new models themselves are available, or the new model, is available within the Meta AI app. You'll start to see AI capabilities expanding across that ecosystem, whether it's WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever it may be. As I mentioned, strategic move from open to closed models. This is capitalism at its finest. Ultimately, they are looking to kind of close the doors on this, develop their own technologies, and then leverage that across the ecosystem that they own. Super interesting times. Doubling down on investment, so expect more to come from that, and obviously looking to compete against some of those frontier models. Stephen, I don't know if you're a Facebook user, but have you used any of the AI capabilities across Meta?
Do you know what I think? The thing that's in Meta's favor, even though they're behind the curve on AI, I think, is their distribution, right? Just the number of people who touch their platform in different ways or forms. Not a big user of Facebook, actually, don't have a Facebook account. Occasional scroller of Instagram, but fairly heavy user of WhatsApp, which I think most people in the UK are. And the use case I found for Meta's AI was recently on a plane flight where you get internet access rate limited just to messaging only. And inside of WhatsApp, you can talk to Meta AI in the chat. And so I could continue to do that and query AI models through WhatsApp while I was up in the sky on a plane using the free Wi-Fi, which was quite funny. But apart from that, haven't used it too much. And I think the interesting story here about the Anthropic and Mythos models are worth pausing on because, as you mentioned, Chris, that frontier model sort of released and then held back. And from what I've read, the reason for holding it back is it's so powerful that it's able to find security flaws in some of the really big tech stacks that are out there. And so actually what they've decided is, rather than release it into the wild and risk lots of sort of rogue hacking happening with people using the Mythos model, instead they've actually given it to those big tech firms and said, hey, use this tech, find the security flaws that you weren't aware of, fix them, and then at a certain point in the future, they might release the models. Quite a dystopian sort of view of how things might flow out in the future, but props to Anthropic for holding it back and not releasing it into the world at this point in time. But certainly I'm excited about using it when it does go live.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this before we started, but looking at the benchmarks, the model has just surpassed them by quite a lot. So again, the model's releasing faster and just developing technology, which is surpassing the previous models by quite some way. So pretty interesting times. And I do like the Anthropic approach of pre-launching it to certain strategic partners. I do wonder if you're not part of that kind of partner ecosystem when it comes to general availability, whether there's going to be some kind of downstream impacts, hacking, etc.
Yeah, that reminds me. Actually, I did apply to their partner program, but haven't been accepted yet. So let's see. Fingers crossed.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. I'm hoping no hackers come Blackbird's way, but we shall see. Yeah, it's
For sure. For sure.
interesting one. I think the other area is obviously, yeah, the model capabilities itself, and there's some discussions and stats out there around the capabilities of these models, and they're actually starting to surpass a lot of the human kind of workforce that's out there. So yeah, the models have developed and got to a point where you're talking like nearly close to AGI capabilities. So again, this is going to keep continuing. So one to keep aware of.
Absolutely.
Awesome tech layoffs. So we covered this in episode 1, but we wanted to give you an update on some stats. Now we have moved into Q. There were some stats which came out recently around specifically focused on the global technology sector, and we could see that nearly 80,000 jobs in the first quarter of 2026 have been shed. And again, raising these concerns around the capabilities of AI and obviously utilizing AI to replace the workforce. I think these numbers, what's interesting about the stats was that 75% of these cuts were actually from the US. So yeah, a large proportion of this is impacting the US workforce. Again, going back to episode 1, I think AI is being used as kind of that silver bullet. There's definitely other things at play here, which is impacting these job cuts. And actually, what we're starting to see is that kind of entry level work is being cut and being replaced by AI. So there's impacts across the board, but certainly the kind of entry level roles are being cut and not replaced. But obviously, the things like the cost of capital, interest rates, large organizations which have overhired during COVID, they're still applicable. So obviously, AI gets tarnished with the brush that it's all AI and this is the impact, but there are other things at play, which is important to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the leading indicator for us to keep an eye on is that non-farm payroll number that comes out of the US. So how many job openings are there? And for now, it seems to be holding up quite well. So even though there's lots of layoffs specifically in the tech sector, overall, I think job situation seems relatively buoyant in the US. But if that starts to go south as well, then I think
Yeah.
things get a little bit more challenging.
There's a bit of a conflicting view in the market. I'm seeing certain areas within the tech ecosystem or industry that actually jobs are booming. So it's one to keep aware of, keep an eye on, in particular
Mm.
within your niche of the market. Because we're starting to see, instead of doing the grunt work, actually people getting elevated and becoming project managers, and the workforce actually managing fleets of agents. So there's a lot of talk about displacement. There's a lot of talk about actually it'll create new roles. So we're starting to see swirls across both parts or both stories that are in the market. So we'll keep you abreast of all the updates, but as we go through the quarters, it's always good to reflect on the numbers.
For sure.
Cool. Super exciting one. And an area that myself and you, Stephen, are in deep. But the AI Search BBC article, which came out yesterday or the day before, the title being Businesses Scramble to Get Noticed by AI Search. Lots of good insight in this particular article. HubSpot obviously being mentioned, that they lost nearly 140 million website visitors in a single year. The cause of that is being the AI-driven search behavior changes. So ultimately, users getting their answers directly in the answer engines and not having to go through to the website to actually find the information they require. Super interesting that we're starting to see people like BBC picking up on this. We've been in this for a number of months now and seeing this has developed. I talk a lot about zero-click search and that ultimately across industries, and I work with a number of clients across different industries. The impressions are actually jumping, but clicks through to website are decreasing, and it's very clear the direction of travel where the industry is going. These large organizations do not want you ultimately going through to the website frequently. They want to maintain you within their ecosystem and actually be able to monetize that user. So this article came out and it was all basically what we've been seeing for a number of months now, especially with the introduction of things like AI overviews. So if you're a brand listening to this, you're probably experiencing this, looking at GA4, the impressions are up, clicks are down. We call it zero-click search or crocodile teeth. And answer engine optimization or generative engine optimization is the new discipline, which is extremely important and strategic for businesses. Steve, I don't know whether you're seeing this across your clients as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely the zero-click phenomenon, which is impacting HubSpot, right? And I think really interesting, like you said, with this news article coming out, it's kind of making AEO, GEO, AI search go go somewhat mainstream. I think it did quite a good job of laying things out relatively simple. And it's also something that with clients as well, you've been trying to explain some of these acronyms and what's going on in this space in simple terms so that it's easy to understand. Now, I like the term AI search. I'm quite glad that they led with that. It feels like a good umbrella for everything that's going on. And then you have these other acronyms underneath, right? So AEO, Answer Engine Optimization, and GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. I think the way I'd heard that described was, answer engine optimization would be the Google answers you get in search now, the AI overviews, and I think generative is, more like when you're in a chat and you're getting this fully formed answer and maybe querying multiple times. But for me, it's all really the same thing. It's, how is your brand, your product, your service, maybe your name if you're a famous person, how are you being represented in these models when people are asking questions and you should or you want to be part of the answer. So I think it did a good job of explaining that. And then quite aligned to some of those winning tactics as well. It mentioned some important topics I've been talking to clients about already, and this idea of having authority signals that are going into the models, creating content in a way which is easy for them to ingest and understand. Quite often, I think about these LLMs. They're trying to mimic human behavior, and in many ways, they absolutely do. So sometimes they make stuff up, and we call that hallucination. But with humans, it's just classic bullshitting. And then when it comes to trying to find the answers to things, they'll use the path of least resistance. So what's the easiest, quickest way to get the answer to this question? And to me, that's a lot how humans operate as well. So I think they're doing a great job of mimicking it. And as he said in the opening section, maybe we're getting to the point now where we're on the brink of AGI with some of these new frontier models. So interesting that it came into the mainstream adoption, or sorry, the mainstream, let's say, psyche through this BBC News article. And it'll be interesting to see what they do on the follow-ups as well. But I do have to say there was a plug for an agency in the article. So props to them for getting this piece of PR out on the BBC.
Yeah, nice work, nice work. Yeah, I'm with you on AI search. I think the marketing industry has notoriously been bad at branding and overcomplicating things. There are definitely elements within AEO and GEO which are specific to those areas in terms of optimizations. But I think kind of delineating or creating a differential between traditional search and AI search, I think that's clearer for brands to kind of navigate. And then you can obviously go deeper into the different acronyms to look at optimizations within each. But AI search is a nice capture or a nice umbrella, as you mentioned. I think an important thing for the listeners to understand is that these models are constantly evolving. So a strategy that would work for maybe 2 or 3 months, actually when a new model is released or a new iteration of the model, things change quite dramatically. And there's been some good examples here on the ChatGPT side where they're starting to favor sites or websites more in their latest model release, which I believe is 5. So what's important for brands to do, it's not a set and forget. You have to constantly be evolving as these new models are being released because the strategy, the tactics, the optimizations will change quite frequently. So it's an ever evolving space. And yeah, I'm glad it was picked up by the BBC. Kind of what we've been saying for a number of months now and kind of educating the market, but this is the new norm. You're ultimately going to see traffic decline pretty substantially. So this is going to become a strategic importance and be that kind of board level priority for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's good validation of the things that we've been talking about and speaking to clients over the past few months. And I think you said latest model on ChatGPT, so 5.4, I think is the most recent iteration. And I think this idea that with the new models, comes potentially different tactics or different things you should focus on. For me, the important thing is to find a way to track it. Because if you're not tracking, then you won't be able to see these changes as they happen in real time.
Yeah, 100%. I talk a lot about kind of reverse engineering the models to make sure you're tracking the relevant prompts for your business, identifying those gaps and opportunities, and then from there, optimization begins. Awesome.
Exactly.
Moving into Shopify. So again, this is an area that me and you are in on a daily basis. This area is extremely exciting and ties nicely to AI search. And this is obviously the announcements which Shopify made about obviously releasing capabilities or agentic capabilities to their merchants and beyond. I think, and Stephen, you can go into more detail on it, but I think what's important is to understand, one, the direction of travel. As a consumer, like surfing the web, looking at different websites, comparing prices, capabilities, products. A lot of that is going to be handled directly in the answer engines, and it's going to be a seamless experience for you as a consumer buying travel, buying holidays, buying whatever it may be. There's a lot of stats out there at the moment kind of putting a valuation on this industry. And McKinsey came out and said it's probably likely to reach around 3 to 5 trillion by 2030. I actually think that's lowballed. I mean, I'm ever the optimist. I always see things maybe add an extra zero on them. But I think as a consumer, if you have the ability to research, compare, find the best price and transact directly in a single platform that has all of your information stored, I think that's going to be a game changer for me. And maybe it's because I'm like in the tech industry and I'm familiar with this, but I think this is going to explode. And you have partners like Shopify and Amazon really doubling down on this. Google obviously introducing capabilities, ChatGPT as well. I think this is going to be huge. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think coming in hot with you on this one, I think whenever technology or a product or a service makes a consumer's life, significantly easier and takes friction away, then it always gets traction real quickly. So I can just see the adoption going really, really through the roof, really sort of parabolic in its adoption curve. I think there's a couple of interesting things about Shopify announcements, right? So one is, there's a big fanfare about ChatGPT and shopping in ChatGPT, and everyone's getting ready for that, and then they pulled back from it. I think they realized that being the merchant of record is quite challenging, and actually being the person that takes the payment and then sends the order and is responsible for tracking the shipment, that's just a lot of headaches, which they don't necessarily need. And they'd pulled away from it. So I think everyone then thought, okay, well, you can't shop inside ChatGPT anymore, but that is absolutely not the case. It's just a different way of let's say, the tech stack evolving. And so what that looks like now is every single Shopify store worldwide, without requiring to do anything, is pushing product cards into ChatGPT for certain queries. So that means your products, if you sell on Shopify, are going to be visible inside of ChatGPT. People can find and discover those products inside of the chat, and then they'll click on the shopping card and it'll take them to a Shopify checkout. What's great about that is most D2C sites around the world are Shopify enabled or powered by Shopify. Your card details are already saved. The checkout's one click. It's really frictionless, and I can really see that taking off, and a lot of people doing the browsing and the selection inside of ChatGPT, or the consideration and the selection inside of ChatGPT, and then doing that checkout through a Shopify-enabled store. And then the other bit, Chris, which I think is super interesting, is Shopify have said, as well as auto-permissioning all Shopify stores to push their shopping cards into ChatGPT. If you don't sell on Shopify, you can connect to Shopify, pipe in all of your product details, and that will give you access to ChatGPT. So they've effectively said that they'll be happy to be the pipe and the transaction layer for ChatGPT for all products worldwide, which to me is a direct competition to what Amazon are trying to do with Rufus and Shop Direct and Buy For Me, which is essentially the same thing, where they're allowing or trying to permission users on the Amazon platform to go and buy things off of Amazon using the Amazon tech and infrastructure and payment gateway. So big battle to sort of own that consumer, make sure they don't need to leave your platform. But I actually think the Shopify one with ChatGPT is going to work super well. So I'm pretty bullish on that setup.
Yeah, same. I think they've got the infrastructure, they've got the distribution, they have the clients. I think, they make this work. It's going to be a game changer for them. Going back to what we mentioned before, obviously with the zero-click search piece, this is going to be huge for the likes of Google, ChatGPT, and others. You now have obviously your organic, but you'll also have products directly in platform. For them, the amount of search queries, especially on the Google side, is dramatically increasing because you're having this natural language. So combining responses, product cards, advertising, and then checkout, it's a game changer for them. So there's a reason why these large organizations are doing this, because ultimately they can create or expand the pie of those searches and then have ads associated with that, right? So for Google, ChatGPT, this is going to be a huge revenue driver for them. So instead of having kind of static growth in search queries, this is going to go through the roof, and then the advertising business will improve alongside that. So I'm very bullish on this. I think, it's going to be a game changer, and people like Shopify, Amazon doubling down on it just kind of proves that out.
Totally.
Awesome. We're going to cover off ChatGPT ads probably in more detail next week in episode 3. We've seen a little bit around from the industry around some updates there. I know, Stephen, you sent some stuff across regarding different pricing models in ChatGPT. If you can give the audience a little taster.
Yeah, I think there was a post on LinkedIn by someone I follow this week that just said they'd seen in the code base on ChatGPT that they were getting ready for CPC ads. So that would be cost per click, the lower funnel conversion type ads that we see in places like Amazon and on Google search. So that's an exciting moment. I think that's something I was expecting ChatGPT to actually lead with rather than the display ads that they started with. But if we are going to see ChatGPT come that transaction layer and its collaboration with Shopify, then I think those CPC ads might work super well. So excited to talk a little bit more about that in the next episode.
It was a bit of a false start for ChatGPT across a number of their different product launches, agentic commerce, ads, but they have the technology behind them to test the market and develop technology which kind of supports their own infrastructure. So I expect more to come, like new pricing models, lower entry points on the pricing, and then new capabilities, right? Because the marketing industry requires it. We require measurement capabilities as well. This is going to develop pretty fast, especially with the new models launching.
For sure.
We'll cover that up in
yeah.
episode 3.
I was going to say one quick thing, Chris, because props to them for trying and pushing all this stuff out, quickly and then seeing what sticks. But I did hear on the advertising side, you're talking about the infrastructure that needs to be put in place. I heard that the people who were running ChatGPT ads were being sent their results on CSV files, which was quite amusing. So still a bit of a way to go in building out the back end tech stack platform for people to run the ads, I think.
Nice. Yeah. Hopefully it's not Excel docs that we get, but something which is fully baked out. Again, as we get the information from or updates from the industry, we'll let you guys know. And yeah, like I say, we'll cover that in episode 3. We are also live now across YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, which is very exciting. Hopefully, I haven't tested it out, but I think we're for any listeners that are listening to us on YouTube, but maybe use Spotify as your podcast or streaming service, you can pick us up there. Just type in the Agent Academy and you'll be able to find us. So with that, we will see you next week for episode 3. We'll go into more detail around AI news and industry news for the marketing industry. So yeah, been a pleasure. Speak soon.